Hello, and welcome to We Live for Saturday, your favorite college football podcast. I'm your co-host, Mike, and with me, as always, is your other co-host, John. John, how you doing this evening?
I'm doing good. We had a little reprieve of the incredible cold weather here. I think yesterday was like down to negative 19.
Yeah.
Which is cold. That's pretty cool.
Oh, yeah, when the wind chill is like negative 30, yeah, that's
Yeah.
dangerously cold.
Yeah. But today was pretty nice. It was really nice outside. Got to take my dog for an actual walk, which she loved, so that was good.
Yes.
And had a friend over for dinner yesterday, and gosh, man, my fiance can freaking cook, dude. And she made these braised short ribs with red wine and just like reduced this whole thing down, and it was on another level, man. Like incredible.
Sounds awesome.
Yeah. So I'm good. I'm well fed. It's good to be home. I love it. Yeah. How about you?
Doing awesome, man. Like I'm with you. I'm glad that it got nicer today. It was actually, there were some really pretty, like very light snowflakes for most of the day today.
Yeah.
But not enough for it to amount to anything.
Mm-hmm.
But enough that it really, it set a nice ambiance. And it was about 27, which with how cold it's been, 27 might as well be like 60.
Exactly.
Like you're outside in a coat, like, oh, I'm fine. Like it's not like the deep, like cold piercing your lungs kind of thing like we've been having.
Yep.
So that's cool. I've got my significant other Mia's family is coming this weekend.
Okay.
So we are going to or their parents. So we are going to entertain them. So it's been a lot of planning that and also cleaning.
Oh yeah.
Because like it's never ever clean it. Like even if you think it's already clean, it's not clean enough. You better get it done.
That's right.
You're having guests. I was raised in a certain way that your guests better see your house looking, or your living space looking as clean as humanly possible, or else you're a bad person and a bad Protestant.
That's
you're
right.
Bad. It's wrong.
Same. Yeah, that's how it was, man. Yeah.
They always talk about the Catholics having a guilt complex, man. I think that there is a specific kind of upper Midwest Protestant guilt complex that we are raised with. Absolutely. To feel like bad about things in advance that we haven't done wrong.
Well, and even if it is like perfect, you're still going to apologize for it somehow.
Yeah. Somehow it's going to be like, well, it could have been a little better.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. Yeah.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Somehow you're still sorry and apologizing to your guests for something not being right, but whatever. That's the way it is. Yeah. Cool. Well, yeah. Well, we got some stuff to talk about. We've got
a national title winner. We got a national champion.
2 years in a row, Big Ten, baby.
Yeah. We're going to get into it. We're going to talk about it. We're going to take a whole victory lap.
Mm-hmm.
So get excited for that.
Absolutely.
Anything you want to say before we get into the beginning part of the show?
Yes, as always, if you want to find We Live for Saturday, you can find us on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Podcast Addict. You can find us on Twitter at We Live for B1GSat. You can find Mike at Alibaba26. You can find me, John, at Norwegian Gopher. You can also email us, We Live for Saturday, b1g@gmail.com.
So we are going to talk about the national title game. We're going to also talk about a couple other little current events, odds and ends, as we tend to. And then we're going to grade briefly every Big Ten team for the 2024-25 football season. So I'm excited. I know you looked at our predictions and compared them a little bit to what they ended up. That'll be fun to see a little bit of the difference there. But yeah, I'm excited. And it is it's a bittersweet time, the postseason, right? Because we're about as far away from football as we'll ever be.
Mm-hmm.
But we just had a really satisfying football season come to a fun conclusion.
It was super exciting. It was super satisfying. And honestly, the 12-team playoff, I loved it. I really did. And I thought it was a lot of fun. It was good to see some other teams in there and involved. I understand it still kind of came down to like, a helmet school versus helmet school, top tier team. But you know what?
That's what's usually going to happen.
But it still was so much more fun seeing other teams involved and getting a shot.
Yeah.
And that's all we ask for, and So anyone who's just, like wanting to me, the 4-team playoff was a freaking joke. And
Yeah, it was bad.
I
It
think that,
concentrated talent in like a handful of schools, and
yeah.
it was really bad for the sport.
So this to me works, and I really enjoyed it. And anyone also who, let's talk more, I can go on forever and ever about how on campus games and how I would love to have one more round, on campus. That would be great.
Mm-hmm.
But the fact that they did it goes to show you how amazing that is. And also just the fact that it was finally, you saw that the SEC didn't get a built-in advantage by having these games notoriously every year in the South. And because it's just the way it was set up. And now we got to see some Big Ten teams have some home field advantage and people playing up north the way it should be, and if it had been, the other way around, if other teams had won the right to have a home field advantage back in Texas or wherever down south, then yeah, that's the way it should be. But if,
They still have an advantage in the sense that most of the big bowl locations are in the South and West.
That's true. Yeah.
Rose Bowl, Cotton Bowl, Orange Bowl, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Like all those, no one's coming, honestly, to truly have reciprocity, we need to just move the national championship around to a different city every year.
Agreed.
And that's got to include northern cities.
Yeah.
It's got to include, Chicago and Minneapolis and Indianapolis. And, it can't just be the same handful of southern spots so that these southern and western schools get de facto home games.
Yep.
Like, no, we're not doing that anymore. We're past that point of the sport. So I'd either want to see, like you said, more on campus, or else at the very least, they need to start rotating that national title game.
Yeah, totally agree. Yeah. Or both is what I would prefer. But yeah, man, it was exciting. I loved it. I really enjoyed it. And then obviously it ended in the way that you and I predicted at the beginning of the season.
We did in fact predict that
with a victory by the Ohio State Buckeyes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Awesome. So we will talk about that. But first we talk a little current events.
Yes.
So we've got some, I guess, whiny punditry.
A little bit
of whining. And there are some people, Paul Feinbaum, to his credit, came out and said that the Big Ten is the king of college football.
Yep.
Full stop. And he's right. 2 consecutive titles, dominated the postseason, crushed the SEC head-to-head. I mean, there's nothing else to say. But some pundits are having a really hard time dealing with the new reality, in that they aren't dealing with it. They're pretending, they're closing their eyes, covering their eyes, saying, no, it can't be. And so we've got ESPN's Peter Burns, who said in a tweet, no, the Big Ten hasn't surpassed the SEC as a football league. 2 teams having historic runs in back-to-back seasons is a nice outlier rather than the norm. Incredibly top-heavy league. Stop this nonsense. Okay, this is funny for multiple reasons. First of all, when the SEC first started winning titles, they were a top-heavy league too.
Yep.
It was just, if you remember, it was kind of Florida and LSU, just them, and then Alabama once Nick Saban got there.
Yep.
And everybody else, wasn't always peaches and cream. It wasn't always great. Then Urban Meyer left. And for a while, it was just, it was Alabama and LSU. Then towards the end of it, Alabama and Georgia were kind of at the top. So this idea that the SEC has this rotating cast of juggernaut teams is just not reality.
No.
Yes, they've had more teams. There are a couple programs like your LSU who can jump up and get a title or whatever, right? Yeah. But for the most part, it's been for long periods, it was pretty lopsided in the SEC. But we were told that if you win the championship and you have the best, you look the best coming out of the postseason, then you're the best conference.
Mm-hmm.
We were told that's all that mattered, was winning titles.
Yep.
That's what we were told all those years.
Yep.
So you don't get to change the rules now, first of all. Second of all, you can't say the Big Ten's a top-heavy league because the Big Ten beat the SEC 5-1 head-to-head in the postseason. 5-1. Does that sound top-heavy to you, John?
Sure doesn't.
6 different teams, and it took an all-time collapse by Iowa for it not to be 6-0.
Yeah.
Because Iowa tried to, I mean, Iowa had to really work to lose that game.
Yeah. Yeah.
They had to really work at it to lose that game. And that was without Caleb Johnson.
Yep. Yep.
And I know Luther Burden didn't play, but Brady Cook played and Theo Weiss played. And like, so you had, I think, a more shorthanded Iowa team than Missouri. So like even the loss is kind of understandable. And then again, there were the 5 wins.
Yes.
And you had Michigan, everyone said was way outmanned, beat Alabama. Mm-hmm. And you had South Carolina that everyone said was a playoff contender and deserved to be in, and they got smacked by Brett Bielema's Illini.
Mm-hmm.
So these pundits, man, they are not, you know what, oh man, I was going to go, there's a C.S. Lewis book in the Chronicles of Narnia where there are these guys, like, they're standing in like a closed off space, mm-hmm. and they think they're stuck, but they're not. Mm-hmm. And they could just walk, but they can't because they can't see what's right in front of their faces because they're so blinded to the world by their own, like, yeah. So that's kind of what I think about these pundits. Yeah. That they're all like, they're standing still, like the whole world's moving past them, and they're standing still, closing their eyes, saying, no, it's still the way it used to be. It's still that way.
Yeah.
And it's not because NIL is here. And before, all the SEC teams were cheating except for Vandy.
Mm-hmm.
And none of the Big Ten teams were cheating except for Ohio State, Michigan, and Penn State.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
There's some exceptions. Yep. You know, Nebraska was probably cheating a little bit too. Not to as good of effect, but they were, you know, but it wasn't nearly on the same scale. Now everyone's paying, and it turns out that everyone has money, and you don't have to have, you know, there was this idea like 15 years ago that in college football that demographics were destiny, and that the Southern teams would, you know, like, I remember there was a guy who used to be a Gopher writer. He's retired now. He was really bad. And he said that Rice would be better than Big Ten teams because they were in the deep South and had more access to talent. And I said to him, man, there's one thing I've learned in this whole life in this country of ours, in the US of A, and that's that money talks.
Yeah.
And the Big Ten always had the most money.
Yep.
So the Big Ten was never going away. And the Big Ten still has the most money. So, yeah, the SEC, look, I think this year the Big Ten is clearly better because we saw it on the field.
Mm-hmm.
We saw it on the field. We saw it in the postseason, the playoffs, and the bowl games. We saw it on the field. We saw it during the regular season, even in the more consistency that you saw from the better Big Ten teams. But do I think the SEC is going away? No, of course not. I think the SEC could easily come back and win the title next year, but they're never going to be dominant again.
Yeah.
It's never going to be a thing again where the SEC can try to claim that they have this whole sport cornered and that they're going to win title after title after title after title. Like, that world is over.
Yeah. They don't own the talent in the Deep South anymore. And not that they really did as much as they were portrayed to, you know, for all those years. But now, especially like you said, like now that money talks even more so, and now everybody can play this game that the SEC has been playing and cheating when it was cheating. Now it's not. So now we can all do it and we can all participate. And you can see the results are already evident just in like the first couple of years of NIL. Here we are, and it's in the field has been leveled, and it's beautiful, and I'm loving it.
Yeah. Oh, me too, man. Me too. Because it was so unfair when a percentage of the schools were cheating and then most of the schools weren't.
Mm-hmm.
That wasn't even remotely fair.
Yeah.
And that's why it was so funny. Nick Saban was like, well, this is unsustainable, this system. And I was like, you were paying guys under the table while your opponents weren't paying anything. And you think this system where the players actually get paid is unsustainable?
Yeah.
That is some plantation mentality, like nonsense from Nick Saban saying, oh man, it was so great before the players got paid openly when we could give a guy $50,000 under the table and he couldn't negotiate for $250,000 like he can now.
Yep. Now, yeah, and like of course it's the guy that probably benefited the most out of this for, decades.
The most from the having bagmen and cheating. Nobody benefited more than Nick Saban. People consider him the greatest college football coach of all time, and he's an all-time great. He's a fantastic coach. But come on, man.
Yeah.
They were cheating at a crazy level. Level.
And now
they would have the best recruiting class in the country like every year.
Yeah.
And it would be like every year. It'd be like, come on, man, that's not even possible.
No.
Yeah. But guys aren't doing that, and guys who do go to those schools, they aren't willing to sit there for 2-3 years until it's their turn.
Yep.
If you don't play them by year 2, sometimes even by year 1, they're just gonna leave.
Well, and the retention that teams like Alabama had for all those years too, like you think some of those players stayed because like, oh, I'm just going to wait my turn. They stayed because there was a financial incentive.
Yeah, they stayed because they were being paid.
Exactly.
Now they can get paid and play. And guys, if they have the choice between getting paid and sitting and getting paid and playing, they're going to get paid and play. And they should. And that brings more competition and it gives more parity, and it's awesome. So it's all really, really exciting. We should talk about this national title game.
Yeah.
You there? John?
Yeah. Yep.
All right, good. Okay. You froze and I couldn't hear you for a while, so I kept talking and you probably did too.
Oh.
So we'll see how that goes on. But should we talk about this national?
I was listening to you. I can hear me.
Oh, you could hear me. That's great. I could not hear you.
Yeah. Whole time.
All right. Should we talk about this national title game?
Yeah, let's.
First we were going to talk about. Sorry. First we were going to talk about the Xavier Lucas thing.
Yes.
So Xavier Lucas is a defensive back from Wisconsin. He put into the transfer portal to head to Miami, and Wisconsin refused to process his transfer portal request. And they said it's because he signed a binding 2-year NIL deal with them, and thus they didn't have to process him. So what happened was we found out something really interesting from this, in that they ruled essentially that you can just, even if you're not approved in the transfer portal, you can just unenroll from one school and enroll in another, and there's nothing to stop you from doing that. So the transfer portal kind of doesn't have power anymore like it did before. So that's really interesting. That's one aspect of this. The other thing is that the Big Ten backed Wisconsin in their argument with Lucas in a strong statement, which I thought was really interesting and kind of surprising. But I get that, leagues are sick of tampering and they want to put a line in the sand. But I just don't know if that's going to work. I don't know how you can really stop tampering. You and I have always been of the opinion on this show that we need a collective bargaining agreement and multi-year contracts. And until we get that, we're going to have tampering.
Yeah.
Then we'll have some tampering, but it'll be more controlled.
Well, and not only that, but you need a commissioner, man. You need someone who's going to be able to like call these shots and make decisions and I think like head up all this stuff and make some like actual rules and guidelines that are enforced, So
yeah, it's just whenever they try to enforce something, the courts tell them they can't.
Yeah.
But again, that's because these guys aren't legally employees. Once you make them employees, then they have to abide by. Anyway, whatever. But that's not going to happen anytime soon because of what's happening. Because of who's in power. That's just not going to happen now. So we can talk about that again in 4 years, I guess.
Sure.
In the meantime, from a PR standpoint, John, it just looks like Wisconsin has sour grapes and doesn't want to let this guy go to Miami. And it's kind of becoming a PR disaster for them.
Yeah, it's, whatever the reality is with it, and I think, of course, I'm sure there on both sides there's some legitimate arguments, and people are upset, and rightfully so. But the way it's looked, I think, has just not been good, like you said, from a PR standpoint, whatever the reality really is.
Yeah.
And you can explain that to people, but a lot of these kids or recruits or transfers, and they see that kind of stuff, and it makes you nervous. I mean, it would give you cold feet, wondering, okay, well, is there a potential for this to be a problem? If for whatever
Right.
reason I wanted to transfer, are they gonna give me a hard time, or
Are they
or
going to
even,
sue me?
yeah, are they gonna sue me? I mean, even
Yeah.
current players there, that are
Yeah.
there now, that maybe are thinking about transferring, because there's another portal, there's a spring portal that's coming up,
Yeah.
and I don't know. I mean, I don't think, that it's necessarily going to stop a bunch of players, but it might give some people, like, cause them to have a second thought about it.
Yeah.
We'll see.
It's just one more off the field distraction for Luke Fickell in what's been a tougher than expected job in Madison.
Yeah, and I don't even know, like, what his involvement is in it, but I know that there's a lot of pressure on him right now, and
Yeah.
and I'm sure that this has caused some problems and issues, and who knows, there may have been a number of emotional reactions to this whole thing, because he was a highly touted recruit,
Yeah. Oh yeah.
and
Super highly touted.
and to lose him, that's a blow, and especially moving to a place like Miami, and which we know what that's like. So,
Well, and Fickell, at this point, he only has 4 guys left from the 2023 class. So he has lost a lot of guys.
yeah.
So I get why he's sick of it.
Yeah.
But he's got to find a way to stop that bleeding. Like,
yes, he does.
That's up to him to find a way to keep guys bought in.
Yeah. We'll see, man. It's developing, and obviously
Yeah.
when all of this is settled, we can talk about it a little bit more. But yeah,
For sure.
It's rough, man. I think it's a rough time in Madison. But the Big Ten did come out to make a statement, like you said.
They're supporting them, so
Support them.
that is interesting.
Yeah. So,
all right, let's talk about this national title game, huh?
Let's do it. Yeah.
So it was on Monday, January 20th at Mercedes-Benz Stadium in Atlanta. The 14-2 number 8 Ohio State Buckeyes defeated the 14-2 number 7 Notre Dame Fighting Irish 34-23 to capture their 9th national title. This also marks the second consecutive year that a Big Ten squad won the national championships. The last time that happened was when the Gophers won back-to-back titles in the early 60s. So this was a momentous occasion on any number of levels. This was a really fascinating game. The opening drive of the game for Notre Dame was perfectly scripted. The Irish ran the ball directly at Ohio State, and it worked, albeit just well enough to keep the sticks moving, on an 18-play drive that took nearly 10 minutes off the clock. The scoreboard read 7-0 Irish, and I realized that's exactly the game Notre Dame wants to play. They want to keep the ball for as long as possible, keep Ohio State's offense off the field. I briefly wondered, would the Irish put up more of a fight than I thought? But then Ohio State scored a touchdown on their own 11-play, 75-yard drive that ate up over 6 minutes of clock. Suddenly, it was the second quarter, and it looked like we were in for a dogfight. But we weren't, because Ohio State changed up their defensive strategy. They started crowding the box and attacking the Irish. And on Notre Dame's next 4 possessions, they would punt twice, end the half once, and turn the ball over on downs once. In the meantime, Ohio State scored on its first 5 drives. Touchdown, 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 field goal. So by this point, we are well into the third quarter. It was 31-7. The Irish scored a TD to make it 31-15, but the Buckeyes were driving to make it 38-15. This game was all but over. But then Ohio State wide receiver Emeka Egbuka took a pop pass, ran 24 yards, and had the ball knocked out by Notre Dame defender Drake Bowen, and suddenly the Irish had a chance. But then, when threatening to score on 4th and goal from the 9, with just over 9 minutes left, Irish head coach Marcus Freeman decided to attempt a field goal, which Mitch Jeter missed, loudly doinking the ball off the left goalpost. Freeman was immediately punished for what was a dumb decision, but more on that later. Buckeyes punted, Irish scored a TV, got the 2-point conversion, cut the lead to 8, and then you're getting nervous, right? And Ohio State gets the ball. and they run the ball and it's not going to work, and you can tell. And they
Yeah.
run the ball again and it's not going to work, and you can tell. And that's 3rd and 11. You're like, oh my God, they're going to run the ball. They're going to punt. Notre Dame has a chance to tie this. They're going to go into overtime.
Yep.
Who knows what happens in overtime? But with the game on the line, needing a score to seal it, Ohio State dialed up a perfectly thrown deep ball from Will Howard to Jeremiah Smith against single coverage on a go route, which was completed for 56 yards down to the Irish 10 for 1st and goal. The Buckeyes killed clock. They kicked a field goal. They won the Natty. Ohio State racked up 445 yards of offense and compared to Notre Dame's just 308. Ohio State QB Will Howard was spectacular. 17 for 21, 231 yards, an impressive 11 yards per attempt, 2 TDs, 0 interceptions for a sky-high QBR of 99.1.
Wow.
Woo! Absolutely fantastic job by Will Howard. He also made the play of the game late when the Buckeyes needed it most with that bomb to Jeremiah Smith to ice the game. He also ran for 57 important yards. Running back Quinshon Judkins, though, was also spectacular. 11 carries, 100 yards, 3 TDs, 2 running, 1 receiving, and a 70-yard run that helped Ohio State pull away in the 3rd quarter. Running back Travion Henderson chipped in 49 yards and just over 4 yards per rush. Wide receiver Jeremiah Smith, man, 5 catches for 88 yards and 1 TD, but especially the TD and then also the 56-yarder. And then wide receiver Emeka Egbuka did have 6 catches for 64 yards and 1 rush for 13 yards, but he had that fumble, which cost the Buckeyes dearly. And DN JT Tuimalu had 5 tackles, including 1 sack and 2 TFLs, so monster game for him. For the Irish QB, Riley Leonard, 22 for 31, 255 yards, 8.2 yards per attempt, 2 TDs, 0 picks for an impressive QBR of 88.1. John, I questioned Riley Leonard's arm, but when the Irish needed it most, he delivered. You got to give it up to him for that. Leonard also led Notre Dame in rushing with 40 yards and 17 carries, just 2.4 yards per rush. And the story of the game is that after that opening drive, the Irish flat out couldn't run the ball. Jeremiah Smith and Jadarian Price combined for just 16 yards. Woof. But wide receiver Jaden Greathouse put on a show in the Irish comeback. 6 catches, 128 yards, 2 touchdowns. Amazing performance by him. And tight end Mitchell Evans chipped in 4 grabs for 52 yards. John, what did you think about this national title game?
It was great, man. I mean, I thought it was going to be an absolute blowout.
It was.
It turned out.
I mean, it almost was.
It became closer than what I was hoping for.
Yes.
And it was pretty scary there for a bit in the second half. Because the Irish came back and they adjusted and they were doing well, but they just it's a talent disparity, and you could tell on the field. Like that's really what happened here. And yes, I mean, a couple foolish calls by Marcus Freeman, I think, on the field as well, but it was just Ohio State, man. The fact that they have so much talent on the field is insane. I mean, yes, they spent a lot of money on this team, and they got what they paid for. They wanted and they needed a national title. After that loss to Michigan, there was no other conclusion to this season that would have gone well for him unless he won a national title. And now essentially all is forgiven, And so I think it's, this is a great win for the Buckeyes. This is a great win for the Big Ten. It has been 10 years since Ohio State had won a national title with Urban Meyer. They've been so close, and they've had the talent, I think, for many years. They just couldn't finish. And, this just went the way that we predicted, which is also awesome. So taking a victory lap on that. And I think, it's funny too, how that Michigan loss, I think, was the best thing that could have happened to this Ohio State team.
Oh, it absolutely galvanized them. It brought them together. It refocused them. I mean, Chip Kelly went back and changed their entire run game.
Yep.
Chip Kelly's been running inside zone for 40 years, and he was like, F it. We're going to run gap scheme stuff now. We're going to run counter. We're going to run lead. Like, that's who we are now, and nobody could stop it.
Nope. Well, and with the Irish, it was just offensively, like, what could they really do? I mean, Riley Leonard, and sure, Greathouse had an amazing game, but the second half, like, had they been throwing to him a little bit more in the first half, maybe this would be a different story, but they didn't. And
I think Ohio State got a little lackadaisical with the lead, don't you?
I mean, yeah, I just think it's just interesting to me that they didn't target him more until the second half. And I think obviously you saw that pay off. And also Riley Leonard was their main, I guess like whatever player who could produce on the ground. And you just can't do that. You saw him get banged up early in the game, and he continued to get more banged up as it went on, and it was evident that it caused his play to falter. And I think that with what he's going on now, or what's going on now with Notre Dame, they just got to find some guys, man. They got to find somebody who can throw the ball a little bit better and isn't just going to be a running threat on the ground. Not that Riley Leonard isn't okay, but
yeah, I'm gonna say he threw really well. Like much better than I expected him to.
He did. There were just some of those passes to Greathouse were just floating, man.
He doesn't have a big arm.
Like you said, maybe it was a little lackadaisical because I was like on some of those defenders because I was like some of those balls that were completed because Greathouse was there, but like looked like they could have been easily picked off the other.
Oh, they were lollipops for sure. Yeah.
So, but man, they put up a great fight. They came back as best they could, but again, talent disparity. Ohio State just has way too many weapons on the field.
Yeah, Notre Dame, it'll be interesting next year. It'll either be Angeli, the backup this year, or else Lloyd Carr's grandson.
Oh.
So I think a redshirt. He's a 5-star.
Okay.
And I think he redshirted this year.
Wow.
So it'll be really interesting to see. Like Lloyd Carr's grandson not going to Michigan is a little weird for me. But yeah, so it'll be interesting to see if he's the guy next year or not.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, Notre Dame, you could tell even when the Buckeyes, were rattling off 4 touchdowns in a row, the speed disparity was real.
Yeah.
And Notre Dame played hard and they did a lot of good things, but they would have needed, multiple turnovers for this game to work out for them.
Mm-hmm.
And they needed more than just the Igbokwe thing, man.
Dude.
Oh, I was so mad at him because if that doesn't happen, that game never gets close.
Oh, exactly. Yeah.
They were about to score. It's 38-15 and that's it. That's all she wrote. But yeah, dude, you gotta cover the ball better than that. I got an argument with friend of the podcast, Phil. I'm like, he didn't have 3 points of pressure. And he's like, yes, he did. It was just a great play. And I was like, it's okay, man. You won the title. You can admit that he screwed up. It's okay. He screwed up. Emeka Igbokwe, great player, screwed up.
Yeah.
Shouldn't have had that ball anywhere where it could have been knocked out.
Yep. I mean, and it was good, dude. And that would have been such an amazing play. Like the way he was dodging defenders, it was. Incredible.
That's the thing. That's what sucked is that it was such a cool play, and then he just fumbled. On the way to the ground.
But dude, how great was Quinshon Judkins too, man? And like
Judkins was a grown man. I didn't know he could run fast enough to make it 70 yards.
It was amazing. I mean, he ran out of gas, but he was quick until that last like 10, 15 yards. Like he was moving, dude.
Yeah, and when he unleashes that stiff arm, he's really strong.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just a freak.
So yeah, it was, and again, I gotta give I know you talked about it with the Chip Kelly call that both you and I were texting at that time where it was a run after it was like run, and then like I was just like, dude, this is it. Ohio State is turtling. They're pulling a PJ Fleck. This is what and they're gonna lose this lead. It's gonna tie up. It's gonna come into overtime, and somehow they're gonna lose this game. Like that's what's gonna go on. But Chip Kelly did what no one expected, including us, and went deep, and it paid off and sealed the game. So
Will Howard, man, to step up and make that throw in that moment when you needed it, like that's some ballsy. That's really impressive.
Yeah, it really was. But I have one thing that we got to talk about a little bit, or at least I got to point out, is friend of the pod, Max.
Okay.
Who all season is talking about how this team isn't going to win a playoff. It doesn't deserve it. Never going to win a championship. Ryan Day should be fired.
Yeah.
All season, this guy, just Debbie freaking Downer, man,
Yeah.
in our group chat. And, and I'm just like, okay. And eventually he got to me. It took him all season to the national title game. And eventually I was like, you know what? Maybe I should doubt Ryan Day, and I did. and now I regret it. So thanks a lot, Max.
I mean, you still picked the Buckeyes to win.
I did, but like I had serious doubts. I was really nervous. I was like, oh no, and yeah, and when that whole thing happened, when I was like, oh man, they're gonna turtle, like that's it. And Max was right this whole time, but nope. I'm glad you were wrong, Max, and I'm sure you're glad you were wrong as well. So I just had to bring that up.
Celebrate that natty for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Marcus Freeman thing, man. There was no chance he was going to get 2 more possessions that game. There were only 9 possessions in that whole game. There was no chance he was getting the ball back twice more. So kicking there was one of the stupidest things I've ever seen a coach do in a big game. So Freeman's done a great job this year. He's done a great job at Notre Dame. He's a really great coach with a bright future. That was really stupid.
Yeah. Yes, it was.
Just like mathematically a really bad decision. Notre Dame's offensive line, they couldn't run block at all, but they pass blocked really well against. They kept Riley Leonard clean for the most part. So I thought that was, when they needed to, especially in the second, late in the second half when they were making their comeback. So I thought that was impressive. But Ohio State, man, they're just overwhelming. The Buckeyes. I mean, they ran the ball, they threw the ball, they stopped the run, and until late in the game, they stopped the pass too. So credit the Irish for fighting back, but at 31-7, you had no doubt which was the better team, Yeah. And this Ohio State Buckeyes team is just to stack them right on top of last year's 15-0 Michigan national champions. I mean, that's a run of a couple really great teams. And you look at who Ohio State had to beat to get there. They had the toughest possible draw in the playoff.
Yep.
Tennessee, Oregon, Texas, and then Notre Dame, and they outclassed them all.
Yep.
So give it up to Ryan Day. He never has to. Obviously he should probably beat Michigan next year to calm everybody down. But aside from that, he really is in a good spot. You got to be happy for him and the Buckeyes. And John, I don't know if you've seen the Vegas odds, but Ohio State is ranked as the odds-on favorite to repeat next year, even with everything they're losing. Because when you think about it, they do bring back Caleb Downs and Jeremiah Smith.
Yes.
So the Buckeyes aren't going anywhere. And it's going to be interesting to see if they can make a run at, repeating with kind of a different cast next year. But honestly, as talented as they are, and as much as Ryan Day has this thing humming, I wouldn't bet against them.
Hell no. No. I mean, I've heard really, really, really good things about Julian Sand.
Yes.
I've heard,
I've even heard great things about Tavion St. Clair. If Julian Sand, for whatever reason, is not the guy, people think Tavion St. Clair is amazing.
Well, and also Ohio State can go to the portal and bring in basically whoever they want, essentially. So I'm not too worried about Ohio State finding a good quarterback to replace Will Howard. So they'll be all right. They'll figure it out as they always do. They got the money to pay for it. So must be nice.
Must be nice. But congrats to the Buckeyes, national champs, man. They earned it. That's a big deal. First national title in a decade and their third of this millennium.
Yep.
So pretty impressive stuff.
Good stuff.
And all I'll say to the Buckeyes is, maybe don't wait 10 years next time.
Yeah.
Maybe see if you can, run it back sooner than that.
That'd be great. That would be great.
Because so far, each coach has only gotten one, right? Urban should have had 2, but they were banned from the postseason when he went 12-0 in 2012. So Tressel got 1, Urban got 1, now Day has 1. Does Day get a second one? That'll be something to watch as we go forward. And if he does get a second one, then all of a sudden we start having to ask questions like, is Ryan Day the best? Honestly, even now, is Ryan Day the best coach in college football? I don't know if I say he is until he beats Michigan again.
Yeah.
But let's say he beats Michigan next November.
Yeah.
Then I think I would be ready to say, Ryan Day is the best coach in college football.
Well, I think he has the highest winning percentage of any
He does.
Coach
Of any active coach.
And I think I think of all time, he's like top 6 or something like that, or 7.
Yeah.
Like, he's up there, man. So
It's incredible.
The guy wins. Like, that's just what it is, you know. And
I guess if I had to pick right now, I would maybe give Kirby the nod over him just because he got 2 in a row.
Sure.
But Ryan Day's right there, man. He's right there. He's right there, nipping at his heels.
Yep. Well, again, congratulations, the Big Ten, to the Ohio State Buckeyes, obviously, and just the Big Ten Conference in general for performing well during the offseason and
dominated
this is a win.
Dominated the postseason.
Yep.
So anyone who tries to underrate the Big Ten going into next year, we're going to call them out because to the victor go the spoils. And 2 years in a row, the Big Ten's won a national title. And 2 years in a row, the SEC hasn't even made the national title game.
Yeah.
Hasn't even made the game.
Yep.
So right now, the Big Ten is king, and there's nothing you can do about it.
Mm-hmm.
You can spout your propaganda, but the thing is, nobody's listening anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And if they are listening, they're quote tweeting your reply to you and asking you why you're such a moron. And they should be, because you sound dumb.
Yeah,
you sound dumb. You sound like you're trying to say the sky is green and not blue. That's what you sound like.
Well, if you go to that thread, Peter Burns got absolutely roasted.
Of course he did.
Rightfully so.
Because the Big Ten, you can't deny the Big Ten right now.
Mm-hmm.
Big Ten is having a moment, and there's nothing anyone can say about it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I had a long back and forth with some other SEC fan. I think he was an Ole Miss fan. And then, like, of course, some random Auburn fan decided to chime in, which was hilarious.
That is
funny. Of all teams trying to come in there and tell me how dominant the SEC is. But
did you ask him what happened when we saw them in the Outback Bowl?
I talked about I mentioned some, but and I also asked him about how his bowl game went this year. But
good.
Yeah. So anyway, but it's the SEC is still a fantastic conference, but as of right now, as it stands, the Big Ten is at the top, and as it should, and that should be recognized, and people need to talk about that and recognize it at a national level, and stop trying to force feed us and set a national freaking false narrative all over again, which it's already happening.
Yeah, don't put 10 SEC teams in your top 25 and expect anyone to take you seriously.
No,
don't do it.
It's absurd. It's pandering to the max, and that's what you and I call out here because we don't like to pander, and that's what we won't do for anybody.
No, that happened to me today with some Nebraska fans. They got very upset with me, and I have no hate. That's the thing. I feel like we're pretty favorable to Nebraska on the pod.
Oh, dude, we've been saying nice things about them all season, especially Matt. Like, dude, we love their coach.
Matt Rule's great. So
yes,
but you say one thing they disagree with, they get real uptight. Some of them.
Yeah, I know.
Some of them. Not a lot. I mean, we love our Nebraska friends, but there are some people in that fan base who get real upset.
Yeah, well,
don't pander. We could pander. We could probably get more views from pandering to Nebraska fans if we wanted to.
Yes, but we don't.
We're not gonna.
We just say what we think and what we feel because it's our podcast and we can.
And I also think it's unfair to Nebraska to say to hype them up like they're a national playoff contender. Like last year, all these people hyped them up like they were a national playoff contender when they weren't even close.
Yeah.
And you and I both said 7-5. They ended up 6-6 and went 7-6.
Yep.
So we were much closer than the national pundits who were gassing them up just because they wanted the clicks.
Well, and what we said about that, when they did make it to a bowl game and win their bowl game, we gave them this is a massive step forward to where they were. Like, full props.
Absolutely.
This is a very successful season. So be happy. We're congratulating you. So we're not trying to say anything other than that. We're very happy for you. Good job, Nebraska. So anyway,
good job to the whole Big Ten, especially everyone who won their bowl games. Like, good work.
Yep, absolutely.
Awesome. All right. Should we get into grading these Big Ten teams, John?
Yes, let's do it.
All right. So we're going to just, we're not going to go too crazy in depth, but we're just going to give letter grades and a thought or two about each Big Ten team.
Mm-hmm.
So I was thinking we should start with the Purdue Boilermakers. They went 1-11, 0-9 in the Big Ten with their only win over a bad FCS Indiana State team. Ryan Walters was fired immediately after the season's end. They gave up 40+ points 6 times, 60 plus points twice, including a 66-0 beatdown from Indiana in the old Oaken Bucket game. So I gave Purdue an F.
Yep.
I don't know what else to say.
Same, and there is nothing else to say. It was awful on every level, and it was
one of the worst Big Ten teams I've ever seen.
Yes, it was embarrassing and so hard to watch.
Yeah.
So
it was.
There really isn't much else to say. I had them. I picked Purdue to go 3-9, which is still terrible, but then they ended up. I gave them too much credit. They went 1-11. So. Yep.
Yeah, I had them last in the Big Ten, and they did finish last in the Big Ten, so I feel good about that. But not even I thought they were going 1-11. I thought they would at least win 2 or 3. Yeah. Worse yet, their best players once again got raided in the transfer portal after the season.
So brutal.
So new head coach Barry Odom has his work cut out for him, and I think people in West Lafayette maybe need to be patient with him.
Mm-hmm.
Because it might take a while to get this thing turned around within as bad a shape as it's in.
Yeah.
All right, let's stay in the state of Indiana and go to the Indiana Hoosiers. 11-2, 8-1 in the Big Ten. It was a dream season. It was the dream season. Improbably, Coach Curt Cignetti kept the talent he needed to keep. Nearly all his transfer portal players from JMU and elsewhere were very successful in the Big Ten. Curtis Rourke turned out to be one of the best quarterbacks in the Big Ten. And Curt Cignetti led the most successful season in modern Indiana football history. So, John, I don't know about you. I've got it as an A+. I don't care that they lost to Ohio State. I don't care that they lost in the playoff. Mm-hmm. To do what they did was insane. And Curt Cignetti absolutely deserved conference and national coach of the year honors, in my opinion.
Yeah. No, I agree. Us, but it just didn't quite go that way. Sorry, did I lose you again for a second?
Yeah, just for a minute, but I think we're all right.
All right, cool. Sorry, I don't know what's going on with my internet here. Apologies, everybody. So I had them going 6-6, but they obviously went 11-2. I have them as an A. I would have given them an A+. If they, I guess for me, I'm just I have a different critique, for certain teams, and I wanted to see them put up a little bit more of a fight in that college football playoff.
Yeah, Curt Cignetti coached scared against Notre Dame.
Yeah, that was my one disappointment there, but it's such a slight knock. I mean, they could obviously easily be an A+. It's a win either way. This is a massive, massive step for Indiana. They've never been this good in my lifetime.
No,
and probably many people's lifetime. So this is awesome. Yeah, congratulations to the Hoosiers. It was a great freaking season.
Amazing. I mean, 11-1. I had them 6-6, and people thought that was optimistic, and they went 11-1.
Yep.
So, it was a dream season, and I will say, Indiana fans, I don't think you're going away, but next year, your first 3 games are in the Big Ten. Your out of conference games are jokes, but are Illinois, at Iowa, at Oregon.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to know right away next year. People said, all year, we don't know how good Indiana is. We're going to know.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to know early next year. So that's going to be really exciting.
Yep.
Awesome. All right, moving on. Let's go to the state of California, talk about the UCLA Bruins. They were 5-7, 3-6 in the Big Ten. After losing 5 consecutive games to drop to 1-5, UCLA rattled off 3 consecutive conference wins over Rutgers, Nebraska, and Iowa to save their season. They also got the season-ending win against Fresno State. If they could have beaten USC in that close game, they would have gone bowling. So I gave them a B-. I think given what Foster had to work with, I think he did a good job in year 1. But he also was really close to going to a bowl game and couldn't quite get there. And so I couldn't give him any higher than that.
I gave him a C+. I picked UCLA to go 5-7, and they went 5-7.
Nice.
I gave him a C+ though, because and I agree. I think that they did better than what other people expected. I think the fact that they they really fought through some of those games. Like they were never out of the game. Like
No,
for the most part of the season,
it's
they
true.
were always fighting back. They were tough, and I think that will be able to help them move forward. I think next season, and it's nice to see that. I didn't think UCLA was going to be that put up that much fight at all, and
No, me either.
so it's good to see. We'll see how it goes next season, but yeah, I think C plus and B minus is a pretty fair grade.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, moving on. Let's go to East Lansing, talk about Michigan State. The Spartans went 5-7, 3-6 in the Big Ten. Jonathan Smith is a really good coach, as we saw at Oregon State. But to only manage 2 wins in conference play is pretty rough, especially when one of them came by a single score over a hapless Purdue squad. They got shellacked often throughout the year. I expected a little more from first-year coach Jonathan Smith and alleged wonderkin Aiden Childs. Yeah, Nick Marsh is a nice piece, but they have a lot to put together, and it just didn't happen for them this year. And also, new DC Joe Rossi really struggled in applying pressure to the opposing quarterback, and at one point, I believe, went 6 games without a sack.
Oof.
Consecutive. So, man, we know that about Joe Rossi. His defenses are great, and he'll dial up really good stuff, and he's really good in the bend don't break, but he will just sit back and let the opposing quarterback pick you apart.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because he'll be like, he's gonna make mistakes, and a lot of the time he'll be right.
Yeah.
But sometimes he's wrong, and when he's wrong, you will get picked apart.
Yep.
Yeah. So I had for Sparty, I had C.
Okay.
I expected at least a bowl game given their schedule and the top end players they had.
I had Michigan State. I gave them a D plus.
Okay.
I picked them to only go 4-8. Obviously, what I guess, but same. I expected a little bit more in certain ways as the season went on, and I thought that they were going to look really good because Aiden Childs did look really good at times. But I agree. I think that the coaching just wasn't there where I thought it was going to be, and it just looked a little lost at times. Defensively, it looked a little lost at times. It fell short. So I think, from what I've been told, what I've heard is that Jonathan Smith, it's always kind of a slow build with him, and he'll get there. And I still think he's a great coach, and I think he will. It just might take a couple years, to really get things settled. And so, again, be patient, Sparty fans. I think he'll get there. It's just going to take a little bit of time. And I do think Childs still has what it takes. He just needs to mature a little bit and make some better decisions.
Yeah, he's got to spend all the time in the film room, and he's got to spend all the time with his receivers, and he's got to, do all the little things you have to do to make sure you don't throw a bunch of picks.
Exactly.
Because the difference between a completion and a pick is like this much. It's like it's like a tiny, tiny amount. Oh. So yeah, you got to be really on the ball. And I think he can get there too. It'll be really interesting to see what happens with Michigan State this next year.
Mm-hmm.
All right, next up, Rutgers, 7-6, 4-5 in the Big Ten. Rutgers is who we thought they were. The D was good, but not as great as they were supposed to be without Mohamed Toure. And the running game was great with Monungai. The passing game was pretty hit and miss with Athan, although he played a little better later in the year before he lost them the bowl game in the classic Athan fashion.
Yeah,
throwing picks and just falling down. So yeah, Rutgers, I gave them a B because I thought that they did a lot of good things, and I thought it was really solid that they ended up with a winning record and all that kind of stuff, but they left me wanting more, and there were, some games where they just didn't close where they could have closed. I look at the game against Illinois in particular. Yeah. They had no business losing that game, and, Rutgers, it felt like they left, they could have had another win or two.
Yeah, I gave Rutgers a C. I picked them to go 8-4, and they went 7-6. I thought they were going to do a lot better with that schedule. Yeah. They had opportunities, like you said, and they missed them. And I think they left a couple games out there on the field. So they To me, it was just an average season, with the expectations I think that we now have at Rutgers with Shiano and everything like that. I thought this was a year he was really going to kind of take that next step in showing some real improvement.
Yeah.
Not that this is a bad year for Rutgers, and obviously they've still improved in a big way under Shiano, but I just thought this was the year where they were going to win 8 games, possibly 9. I mean, that's it was that kind of a schedule, but it just
And
kind of fell short.
Monangai is a generational running back.
And there you go. So you had him. I understand they had a big blow early in the season to their defense, but that's to me not an excuse. I think they should have done better than they did. Like I said, not that it was a bad season, but that's why I give him a C, average. It was as expected in a way. So, sorry, not as expected, a little less below than what I thought, but yeah.
No, I think that's fair.
Yeah.
All right, let's go to Evanston and talk about the Wildcats. Northwestern went 4-8, 2-7 in the Big Ten. The offense didn't work. It just didn't work. The defense was okay, but not enough to make up for how anemic the offense was. Northwestern couldn't really block, run, get open, or throw very well. They got to start over next year and hope they can improve a lot and get some help in the portal. John, 4-8 after having such a good year last year. I gave him a D.
Yeah.
I just think it just didn't come together for them at all. And that offense was straight up hard to watch.
Yeah. Same. I give him a D. I had higher expectations. I was hoping Braun was going to be able to kind of reproduce a little bit of what he was going to do. I wasn't expecting as good of a year, but I thought you were still going to see a tougher team out on the field, and it just didn't happen, man, at all. And like you said, the offense was just atrocious. So it was too bad. I hope Braun can still maintain and bounce back a little bit this next season. I like him as a coach. And I think that, they should still stick with him, obviously. But they're going to have to bounce back a little bit. When at least go bowling again would be good.
Yep, for sure. It's going to be really interesting to see what happens at quarterback there next year, because they have to get that right. I think at a school like Northwestern, where it's hard to get good skill position talent just in there at all, you really have to have a quarterback who can be a dual threat and who can, can move the offense a little bit.
Yeah.
All right, let's go to Champaign. Talk about the Illini. 10-3, 6-3 in the Big Ten. Illinois was a 1-score loss to Minnesota away from crashing the college football playoff, but the Gophers had their number that day. Still, 10 wins at Illinois for the first time since 2001 is a cause for celebration. So all hail Bielema, a coach of ball. I mean, to win 10 games, to end beating South Carolina the way he did, and then to troll Beamer the way he did was all just, it was perfect. It was great. No notes. So I gave them an A. I didn't give them an A+ because I thought, had things gone just a little better, they could have made the playoff. But man, to win 10 games at a basketball school like Illinois, that's a really, really big deal.
Yeah. I also gave them an A. I agree. I think that was a massively successful season. It was really good. Good for Bielema, good for the Illini. I had them going 7-5. So they definitely exceeded expectations. I also think it's funny too. I don't know if you saw it on Twitter, but like Bielema is also trolling Josh Pate in his power rankings.
Is he? Yes. Love it. Love it.
And it's just funny too. He's been going off, all off season, like about how, like, what team deserved to be in, what 9-3 team did deserve to be in. And it was obvious it was Illinois.
They beat South Carolina in the bowl game. They proved it.
Exactly. Yeah. But the argument for Alabama and South Carolina, of course, was, because they were SEC teams, was the only reason. But
Alabama and South Carolina both lost their bowl games.
Yep. Exactly.
And South Carolina to Illinois. So we decided that one on the field.
Absolutely. So I think it's great. They're moving forward. We said it for years. Do not doubt Bielema. He's a really good coach, and he has proven, that we were right. And watch out, man. Illinois, I think they're going to be great next year too. Watch out.
Dude, they bring back 18 starters.
Crazy.
So they should be. I mean, they should be ranked top 10 to 15 going into next year. And if
Yeah.
they're not, we're gonna come for you.
Oh yeah.
Because they deserve the benefit of the doubt, just like you give an SEC team who did that the benefit of the doubt. Just like you're all giving South Carolina and Ole Miss the benefit of the doubt.
Yep. 100%.
Yeah. All right. Next up, let's go back to Los Angeles. Talk about the Trojans. USC 7-6, 4-5 in the Big Ten. USC lost a lot of close games. They looked discombobulated all year. On top of that, Lincoln Riley scapegoated Miller Moss and picked the wrong quarterback in Jaden Mayava. That said, they did pull off a surprising win in the bowl game. So I gave them a C- because they talked a lot of trash. They had a lot of talent, and Lincoln Riley talked like they were going to be at the top of the Big Ten, and they don't take a second back seat to anybody and blah, 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 blah. Well, guess what? You had a losing record in the Big Ten.
Yep.
So I don't know, man. I think it's kind of put up or shut up time for Lincoln Riley next year.
Mm-hmm.
And he better hope Hassan Longstreet is ready to go as a true frosh.
Mm-hmm.
Because if he trots out Jaden Mayava to start next year, I just don't think it's going to go great.
I don't either.
People have film on him now. And he throws a lot of balls up for grabs. A lot.
Yep. No, I'm with you. I also gave them a C-. I picked them to go 7-5, and they still won 7 games, but it was rough. It was a rough
ugly,
time getting
though.
there.
Yeah.
It was real ugly. And I'm with you, dude, on the Miller Moss thing. I think it was a mistake, and I will stand by that. Unless he totally freaking falls flat on his face at Louisville. Which I
he
think
won't.
He will. He will not under Jeff Brom.
No.
But that will be the only way I admit to anything that I may have been wrong on Miller Moss. And we're still hearing it from USC fans that we don't know what we're talking about, and Mayava's the truth, and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, I just don't know, man. I don't see it. I just don't.
No.
I know he put up some good stats here towards the last few games of this season, but I just don't see it, dude.
He threw back-to-back pick sixes against Notre Dame.
Yeah.
Back-to-back. At the end of the game.
It's going to be, I think it's going to be rough. And then they lost Quentin Joyner. They lost their
Zachariah Branch gone.
Yeah. I mean, so I don't know.
I mean, they found some receivers in the bowl game though. Makai Lemon and the other guy, I forget offhand.
Yeah. But so there's talent there, obviously, but
always
they're going to have to shore up that pass, the pass pro, man. Like it's been awful.
Yeah.
So they got to fix they got to look at the line of scrimmage, and just some issues. But I agree. I think Lincoln Riley, if he doesn't get things fixed this next year, he'll be gone. So there's still a lot of people calling for his head in LA.
And he'll be okay because they have to pay him so much money. But yeah, I'm with you. I really do think it's put up or shut up time. Like, like if he can't go at least 9-3, then I just don't know. Like. Okay, let's play that game. Let's play the schedule game. Just once, just quick, just indulge me.
Okay.
All right. So we've got 2025 USC, Missouri State. That's a win, obviously. Georgia Southern is a win. At Purdue, that's a win. So that's 3. Sparty, I think, is a win at home. At Illinois is a loss.
Yep.
Versus Michigan is a loss.
Yep.
At Notre Dame is a loss.
Yep.
At Nebraska, I'd lean Nebraska.
Yeah, I'd say
Dylan Raiola versus a quarterback we don't know.
Yeah.
So then Northwestern, that's a win. Okay, 5.
Yep.
Versus Iowa.
It's hard to say.
That's a toss-up, man. That's a toss-up.
Nebraska and Iowa is a little bit of a toss-up. I'd lean Nebraska, but yeah. So toss-up there.
Toss-up there. At Oregon, that's a loss. And then UCLA, that's a win. So that's 7 wins again. So if we give them the Iowa game, that's still 7 wins.
Yeah.
It's still 7-5. So they got to show something, man. They got to show something. They got to upset, they got to be better than we think against. Again, they got to beat basically Illinois, Michigan, Notre Dame. They can't lose all 3 of those games.
No.
They got to win at least one of those games.
Mm-hmm.
And it'll be interesting.
Yeah. Yes, it will.
Yeah.
Wow.
All right. Moving on. Let's go to Ann Arbor and talk about the Wolverines. So Michigan went 8-5, 5-4. So I gave them a B. And here's why. They avoid a C because they beat Ohio State and they beat Alabama. And they did it late in the season. So, yes, were they disappointing? Absolutely. Yes, did I expect more from Sharon Moore? But the fact that he, 8-5 with those 2 wins in particular had me give them a B.
I'm with you. I have them at a B minus because I do think Sharon Moore was a bit of a letdown. It should not have taken this team that long to figure out what's going on at quarterback. And it kept going back and forth and back and forth, and I just didn't know offensively what this team was or what they and how they were ever going to get anything going. And it was a messy season. I give credit, like you said, for finishing off in the right way, but this team should have been better. Also, defensively, they should have been better, and they showed up when they needed to. Like you said, at the end of the season, or no, not even they didn't even have Mason Graham and I'm forgetting his name in the bowl game against Alabama.
Not in the bowl game, but they did against Ohio State.
Yeah. So, but it's just you got to have them up for every game, not just the big games, and that's where I think Sharon Moore just kind of fell short. So I'm sticking with a B minus. I think that he needs to step up his game at a program like that. He should be capable of more.
No, I think that's fair. All right, next up, we have the Ohio State Buckeyes, your national champions, 14-2, just 7-2 in the Big Ten, but still your national champion, which shows you how tough the Big Ten is. Anyway, won the Natty, man. I can't give them the A+ because they didn't beat Michigan or Oregon, but a Natty is always going to be an A. I mean, and the run they went on in the playoffs to blitzkrieg Tennessee and Oregon, to beat Texas, and to mostly blow out Notre Dame, even though I know they came out late, but they mostly blew them out,
Yes.
Until late. So I just, I got to give them an A. They won the national title. That's what that was the bar we set for this team, and they met it.
I know they lost 2 games, and the Oregon game so close, and the Michigan game was definitely an embarrassment, but I'm giving them an A+.
Okay.
Because of the fact that they came after that Michigan loss, they came back with a freaking vengeance.
Yeah.
And they were on a mission, and they were not going to be denied. And I have to give full credit to Ryan Day for that. For getting this team, which obviously had more talent, even in those losses, were clearly the most talented team on the field.
Yeah.
Oregon obviously a little bit closer, but still. And the fact that he was able to galvanize that team and get them back, focused on what they needed to do and what the mission was, and get them going is impressive, man. They could have given up after that, and they didn't. Instead, they went the opposite direction and became a complete buzzsaw and annihilated everyone in their path.
Yeah, it was really impressive.
So, and the fact, like you already brought up, the fact that the people that they destroyed in their path to the national title was the hardest road to get there, and they did it in such a fashion. That's why I'm giving them an A+. And obviously they won the Natty. So, yeah.
I think that's totally fair, for sure. All right, next up, talk about Washington. The Huskies were 6-7, 3-6 in the Big Ten. They got to a bowl game despite total roster turnover. Or sorry, no, they were 4-5 in the Big Ten. Excuse me. They got to a bowl game despite total roster turnover. They lost 21 of 22 starters. They had a whole new coaching staff. So that's a good thing. They didn't do enough for me to give them a higher grade. They still ended up with a losing record, lost the bowl game, etc. And, the conference games were a struggle, a lot of them. But they had some fun pieces. They did some good stuff. And I gave them a B because I think, getting to a bowl game in year one with everything that happened, everything that changed there, I think was a pretty good job.
Yeah. I gave them a B- for the same reasons. I did think that there was some coaching questions, I think, with Jed Fish on making some mistakes and losing a couple of those games that were, disappointing. But they did end up looking better than I thought they were going to. I had them going 5-7, but they, with the roster turnover, I mean, and that would have been totally understandable, and I wouldn't have held anything against them had they gone 5-7. So they exceeded expectations. I do think Jed Fish looks like he's going to be okay in the Big Ten.
Yeah.
We're going to see, obviously, what's going on defensively next year, even though they looked better than I was expecting.
They did, but there's now little Belichick has gone to follow his dad. So he's got so now we got familiar face Ryan Walters.
Yep.
Showing up. So that'll be interesting. We'll see if I wonder if Jed Fish is going to let Ryan Walters play a bunch of man, or if he's going to be like, "Hey Ryan, let's be a little kinder to our DBs here."
Yeah.
Just a little bit. That'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, yeah.
Because Ryan Walters wants to play FU man coverage.
Yes.
And that worked really well at Illinois and not so well at Purdue.
Yes, exactly. So, I'd like to think that Ryan Walters is smart enough to be able to adjust to that, but we'll see. I think it's a good hire. I think it was a smart hire. And it could go very well for Washington. So, I think they did better than I thought. And, disappointing loss in the bowl game, but still, after everything that happened, and like you said, the major turnover and the head coaching change, I think they did okay.
Yeah. All right, let's go to Washington's rival, Oregon. The Ducks were 13-1, 9-0 in the Big Ten, won the Big Ten title over Penn State. This was a fantastic season. Dylan Gabriel had, a Heisman-worthy season.
Mm-hmm.
Was a Heisman finalist. The Ducks were great on offense. They were great on defense. They rolled through and won a Big Ten title. And if we were still in a 4-team playoff, they'd probably be our national champions.
Yep.
If it was a 4-team playoff and the Buckeyes and the Irish weren't in it, Oregon's probably your national champs.
Yep, I agree.
But unfortunately, they had to play Ohio State a second time.
Mm-hmm.
And in that second game, the Buckeyes ran out to a 34-0 start before Oregon even got on the board. So I gave Oregon an A. And I think I gave them an A because around these parts, winning a Big Ten title is a really big deal.
Yep.
Going undefeated and winning a Big Ten title is a really big deal. So I don't care that they lost to Ohio State. I don't even care that they got blown out the way they did. That Ohio State team was an all-time juggernaut. And I think, Oregon had pretty much a dream season despite that loss.
I agree. For all the things that you pointed out, I also gave them an A. They just had a bad draw in the college football playoff, and it was what it was, man. And it was kind of like, in a way, it's too bad that they didn't have that one loss sometime during the season, like that. Because I think, imagine if it was the other way around, had they lost to Ohio State during the regular season, and because they still could have won the Big Ten title at that point. It's still gone.
They would have had to play Ohio State though in the Big Ten title game because Ohio State would have had one fewer, would have had one less loss.
I just think it was like one of those things where it was like meant they were bound to, like, they needed to lose because they'd had some shaky games here and there throughout the season, and you were like, oh, okay, it's like there's some, like, they won, but there was something to it that I'm like, like, all right, maybe
like the Wisconsin game. Yeah.
Yes, like there's a weakness here that someone will eventually exploit, and they did, and Ohio State just absolutely took advantage. So. It was too bad for that, but I think an A is absolutely fair, and they had a wonderful season. And this team, like we said, out of all the new teams, was going to be the most competitive team in the Big Ten in their new conference, and they absolutely were.
Yeah. And Dante Moore, we get to find out, man. We have all the hype, what the fallout at UCLA. He transferred to sit at Oregon for a year, and now we're gonna find out if Dante Moore is the truth or not.
Yep.
So I'm excited because he has, if he reaches his ceiling, he could be a special player, but we really don't know what to expect from him either.
Yep.
Awesome. All right, moving on. Talking about the Nebraska Cornhuskers. Cornhuskers went 7-6, but just 3-6 in the Big Ten. So they made the bowl game, They won a bowl game. I gave them a B+. I think considering where they've been and going almost a decade without making a bowl game, to make a bowl, win the bowl game, I gave them a B+. I couldn't give them any better than that, though, because they only went 3-6 in the Big Ten.
Yeah.
What'd you give them?
Well, I gave them a B. I think it's a massive step forward. I just didn't think that, this highly touted quarterback, which I think he got better as the season went on, but it just wasn't as impressive as I thought it was going to be. I thought that there was going to be a little bit more fireworks. I thought that and also that's attributed to their receivers, I think, too. It's not necessarily all on him. I guess I just wanted to, after all the hype, I don't know, I wanted to see more.
Yeah.
And I think that this is like I said, not to take away from the fact that they did very well, despite, I guess, considering the decade of not doing well at all and not making a bowl game.
Yeah.
This is huge. And they took care of business, man. They really did. I think this is a great step in the right direction. I think Matt Rule is a really good coach. I think he's going to continue to move them forward. And you should expect more, good things, but it just may not be, college football playoffs, but it's going to be solid seasons and maybe a shot at it every once in a while. I think that's kind of what I would expect, which is really good, especially considering, like we said, the last 10 years.
I mean, based on Rule's history, year 3 is when he usually breaks through. So we should expect Nebraska to take and Rayola will be a second-year starter. We should expect Nebraska to take a big step forward next year.
Yeah.
And if they don't, then we got problems. But I think, the expectation should be in year 2 that Rayola makes better decisions, that they have a little better skill position talent around him, that their defense continues to be pretty good, and that you have a team that can be, competitive in all their games, not just some of their games like they were this year.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it'll be good. I'm looking forward to what they're going to be doing. I think Matt Rule is a good coach, and I think that it's just, you should be proud of where you're at and what you did and how you left off this season as a fan.
Yeah. All right. We got a few teams left. We got the triangle of hate. So we've got going to Iowa City to talk about the Hawkeyes. Hawkeyes ended up 8-5. They did go 6-3 in the Big Ten, but I gave them a B-, and here's why. This was a soft schedule. This was their chance to make a real run at the playoff. Instead, they weren't even close, despite a generational running back talent in Caleb Johnson, who carried their offense throughout the year. So I thought the stars aligned. I think Ohio State was really the only tough game that Iowa had, but they lost the early one to Iowa State. And they lost some other weird head scratchers. They lost, didn't they? I think they lost to UCLA and Michigan State.
Yeah.
Those are bad losses, man. And for a team that had legit college football playoff aspirations, I just think this year was kind of a failure.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of Iowa fans are like, oh, they still went 8-5. And I'm like, yeah, but against a soft schedule with a generational running back. They've had, in my count, since Kirk Ferentz got there, they've had 2 running backs like that.
Yeah.
Sean Green and Caleb Johnson.
Yeah.
And having Caleb Johnson at the top of his powers this year, they should have made a real run at the playoff, and they weren't even close.
Yeah. I agree. I actually give them a C-.
Okay.
I think there's problems that I've seen, and I've talked about it a little bit. Obviously, passing game is still somewhat of an issue. It was a little bit better this year, but not by much.
No.
I am seeing cracks in the defense, which I've never seen before.
Yep.
And
secondary even.
Yes.
Really crazy.
Exactly. So to me, so many of these issues that we've talked about for the last year or two, like is like the problem is, in my opinion, is Kirk Ferentz.
Yeah.
he's been a great coach, legendary,
Great
Hall of
coach.
Fame worthy. Like this guy, no doubt, not trying to knock anything. It's just, is this his time? Is he just past his prime, and maybe they should be, which maybe I'm sure they are starting to look at other options because it's a smart thing to do. But I don't know, man. How many more years? Like Fran, everyone wants Fran gone now that in basketball.
Kirk's been a better coach than Fran.
I agree, but it's just like he's past his prime probably, and that's the thing. I think that's where people are getting to as well.
Yeah.
And you still see it. I think they're still okay with Kirk being there, but there's a lot more grumblings going on this year than I've ever seen before.
Yeah, no, I agree. You know, my big
even
fear
with 8 wins.
You know what my big fear with Iowa is? My big fear is that Kirk retires and they tap Bielema.
I know.
I don't want to see that.
And I could see it happen.
He's got a Hawkeye tattoo, for God's sake.
I know.
Yeah. But we don't have to worry about that now. For all we know, Kirk Ferentz could coach another decade, Sure. I don't know. You say He could be done this year. He could also win 9 games this year and be off and running. So
which would not be the first time that something like that happened.
No.
So.
People thought around 2015, people thought Kirk was done too, and then he made the Rose Bowl and was one play away from winning the Big Ten and making the college football playoff. Yep. One play. Yep. Thank you, Michigan State, for making that play. All right. Next up, we have the Wisconsin Badgers. They were 5-7, just 3-6 in the Big Ten. And all I have to say, John, is after all this hype, Luke Fickell brought Cincinnati to the college football playoff, brought in all these portal guys, got this really highly rated recruiting classes.
Yep.
And all we got after all this hype was 5-7.
Yep.
And not only that, but yes, they lost Tyler Van Dyke, but they also were content to have Braden Locke be their backup quarterback 2 years in a row. Mm-hmm. And I can't believe they weren't looking to they knew what Braden Locke had after Tanner Mordecai had to play. I'm surprised they weren't trying harder to find a backup who was better than Braden Locke. And maybe they did. Maybe they couldn't find one. But the defense didn't work. The offense didn't work. I mean, I think about that last game of the year, the Axe game against Minnesota. And Minnesota, it was essentially 24-0. Wisconsin scored off of a penalty, essentially, to make it 24-7. But Minnesota couldn't name their score that day.
Yeah.
They could have scored 40-plus points easily without doing too much different, just being a little more aggressive in spots and making a couple passes that they missed. But, yeah, man, when Luke Fickell came to Wisconsin, I thought that there would be a rebuild, but I thought we were talking about going 7-5 for a year or two, and then in year 3 taking off and winning 10 games and being that and seeing those first couple of years, seeing that team, sometimes the team's not there, but you see it kind of coming together.
Yep.
You know what I mean? I look at the 2019 Gophers and the second half of 2018, they got really hot and you saw the pieces and Rashad Bateman and Tyler Johnson and then they broke out the next year. Right. Or Illinois this year, we saw Luke Altmaier and Pat Bryan, Zachary Franklin. We saw those guys last year, and then this year they kind of put it all together.
Yeah.
I don't see it coming together.
I don't either.
And I look at the 2023 class, they only have 4 guys left from that recruiting class, from the 2023 class.
Mm-hmm.
So guys are leaving out the door to the point where Fickell's suing them for leaving in the case of Xavier Lucas.
Yeah.
So it all looks really bad. And they better hope that Billy Edwards is it.
Yeah.
Because if Billy Edwards isn't it, I don't know what's going to happen next year.
Well, and Billy Edwards, he's hot and cold, man, a lot like Tanner Mordecai was. Yeah. He has some great games or great halves, and then he falls apart, and he's got talent. I got to give him that. So it's not like he's a bad quarterback. No. I just, he's got to be more consistent for them to do better. And obviously, they got to get a running game again, man.
That's the biggest thing. They have to be consistent. They have to consistently run the ball.
Which is crazy to say that about Wisconsin.
Yeah.
And defensively, maybe get a defensive line. It's nuts, man. I've never seen Wisconsin look like this it's been a very, very, very long time. And it just makes you wonder, you do have to ask the question of whether or not Luke Fickell was the right hire and going away from their identity, which they were slightly trying to recapture towards the end of the season, but it was
And apparently they're trying. That's why he got rid of Longo, because he wants to recapture it. But like, why did you ever change it? Why did you ever break? If you were gonna just go back to the power running game anyway, then why did you waste 2 years trying to go to a air raid? Like that just seems like hubris.
And defensively, like we've brought up as well, going away from their defensive identity,
going away from the 3-4, which they were so good at.
So it brings me back to asking the question: should you have hired Jim Leonard as your head coach?
Yes, right?
Yep.
I mean, unless Fickell puts it all together this year.
Yes.
If Fickell puts it all together this year and wins 9 games or something, and then maybe we see, okay, it was worth it, even though with all the missteps.
Yeah.
But if they fall flat on their face again, man.
Yeah.
If they go 5-7 or 6-6, I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, it's the first time they've missed a bowl game in 22 years? Something
like that. Yeah.
Something like that. Yeah.
So finished with a losing record for the first time in that amount of time too.
Yep. So it's a rough in Madison right now. And I think they're going to have to, they got a lot to work on this offseason, man. A lot. So
they do.
We'll see.
All right. Last but not least, we have the Minnesota Golden Gophers. 8-5, 5-4 in the Big Ten. John, when I come back to the Golden Gophers, there's so much to talk about, from Max Brosmer being great to Daniel Jackson being sublime to Darius Taylor to the offensive line having ups and downs to the defense being fantastic pretty much throughout the year. But all I come back to is the games they should have had. Yes. North Carolina, they missed 2 kicks. They make either one with Dragan Kasic. They make either one. They win the game. Rutgers, they were a late turnover, if that doesn't happen, away from winning the game. Michigan, they absolutely essentially had them beat and got screwed by the refs. And should have had every chance to win that, would have had every chance to win that game, or at worst send it to overtime. But I look at those, especially North Carolina, Rutgers, Michigan, and I just think this team that was this, and Penn State, I didn't even mention Penn State.
Yep.
Penn State, which we absolutely should have won the Penn State game.
Yeah.
So this team that went 7-5 could have won 10 or 11 games.
Mm-hmm.
And that hurts. It hurts. So I had a really hard time with this one. I ultimately gave them a B. Because I think that the first part of the season was really rough, but then the Gophers got hot. They went down to, what were they, 2-3 or 2-2 or whatever, and then they got hot, and they really pulled it out. And the rest of the season, played really good ball, starting in the last 2-minute drill at the end of the first half of that Michigan game. They turned things around, and that was a galvanizing force. But the fact that if we win even half of those games we should have won, it's 9-3. Yeah. And so I just I couldn't. Did I say B? I'm saying B-. I can't believe, I can't do better than that. I want to do more than that. And I want to be like, oh, PJ, we did some good things and we won some games and this team came together and they played really hard, and that's all true. But this team was really close to greatness and they just didn't get there.
I also gave the Gophers a B-. For all the reasons you stated. And another thing that just was so disappointing to me was you've got an amazing backfield. You've got great running backs, and you just could not run block.
Couldn't run block. No, couldn't run
block.
Which
is with one of the most experienced offensive lines in the Big Ten, I think, this year.
Yeah.
With Ariante Ursary, and you still can't find a way to consistently run block. And
it got better later in the year, but you're right. For a long time, it took a long time to get there.
Which is bizarre, because that's our bread and butter. That's what we do, and now on, to kind of argue a little bit or add on to that, though, I guess in favor of the Gophers is what it did do was brought in our running backs into the passing game, which is something we've been asking for years.
Yeah, Darius had over 50 catches.
Yes. So there's that, so now let's just incorporate both. Let's how about we just do that now? That'd be great. So.
It's going to hurt to lose Ariante, and obviously it hurt to lose Phillip Daniels, but they're going to have to find a way to be a little more consistent along the offensive line next year.
Yeah.
Maybe they don't have as much star power without Ariante.
Yeah.
But hopefully they can be maybe a more consistent unit run blocking. And that's going to be the key for the Gophers, I think, because they're going to be breaking in redshirt freshman quarterback next year, probably.
Yep.
Unless Pyron wins the job, but I don't JR of the Big Ten Huddle, I love you, and I enjoy your work and I watch your podcast, but it's not going to be Pyron, man. It's going to be Drake Lindsay.
Yeah.
Drake Lindsay's the one who got paid, just to be real.
Yeah.
And Drake Lindsay has a cannon for an arm.
Yes.
So it's going to be him, and we're going to find out. I still think Minnesota is going to be more of a passing team going forward than we were before this year. I think Brosmer, that's who we are now, as long as we have the quarterback to execute it.
Yes. Yeah.
So it's going to be, here we are, man. PJ Fleck was right about Zach Terrell. He was right about Tanner Morgan.
Mm-hmm.
He was wrong about Athan. He was right about Brosmer.
Mm-hmm.
Now we're going to find out if he's right about Lindsay or not.
Yep.
Because the Gophers bring back a lot. They should be good on defense, assuming they can, have a couple guys at corner step up or in the portal who can play well, but the rest of the defense should be pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
It's a matter of what do we have at quarterback? What do we have at wide receiver? So it'll be really interesting to see the Gophers going into this next year. But yeah, it was a close but not quite kind of year for the Gophers.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Disappointing. Good year, but disappointing still. Not I don't feel 100% satisfied.
No.
With it, so, yeah.
But that also shows me how far we've come, right?
Yep.
That we could finish with 8 wins and still feel like there was a lot of meat left on the bone.
Yep. Exactly.
And there wasn't a single game where they were outclassed all year,
Mm-hmm.
So there were a lot of good things about this season too.
Totally true. Cool.
All right. Well, we graded the whole Big Ten. Please jump in the comments. Let us know where we're right and especially where we're wrong.
Yes. Yeah.
Hit us up and tell us what you think. And we're always curious. And John, anything you want to say before we get out of here?
Yes. Well, please follow, subscribe, all that good stuff. Always give us comments. Let us know what you know. You can find us on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcast, and Podcast Addict. You can find We Live for Saturday on Twitter at We Live for B1G Sat. You can find Mike here again at Alibaba26. You can find me, John, at Norwegian Gopher, and you can email us, We Live for Saturday, B1G@gmail.com.
All right, we are moving into the offseason. We got some exciting stuff to talk about. We will, in our next episode that'll come out next week, we will break down kind of how the offseason is going to go, how often we'll be doing episodes. We're going to start doing an occasional, once a month, probably live stream episode.
Mm-hmm.
So that's exciting. And so you can come interact with us while we're recording and give us questions in real time, and talk to us in real time while we're recording. So we're going to do a little bit of that. But we're also going to do a lot of traditional format podcasts as well. But keep it dialed in here. It's going to be – the season may be over, John, but we are just getting revved up.
That's right.
We're just getting going. All right. Well, thanks so much for listening, and we will see you next time.